The 2025 season is going to be a big one for the Burgundy and Gold, and today I've got 8 players on the Commanders roster that need to prove it this season, and you can maybe even say have the most pressure on them to perform here in 2025. Before we get into the video today, get us started down there in the comments section by letting me know which Commanders player has the most to prove this year. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Who's under the most pressure to perform on the Commanders roster? We'll start here with Deebo Samuel, because Deebo, coming off a down year there in San Francisco, he was asked to kind of be like a true number one receiver after Brandon Ayuk went down, and it just didn't go that way. He was even getting outproduced as a receiver by guys like Javon Jennings, George Kittle, the tight end there in San Francisco, and you could tell Brock Purdy just didn't necessarily trust him to win on his routes. He's also, taken a lot of flack this offseason, with the quote-unquote fat Deebo pictures. This is on Media Row during the Super Bowl week where, unflattering photo where it looks like he's fat, all this different stuff, and people were throwing some, warm-up videos of him looking like he was jogging during Commanders OTAs and saying he looks slow, even though he's not going 100% speed. But listen, guys, I think Deebo's got a great opportunity here with the Washington Commanders because, like Kyle Shanahan with the San Francisco 49ers, I think he's joining forces with an offensive coordinator here in Cliff Kingsbury that knows how to use him in the right ways, and he's going to use him as kind of a gadget type of piece. He's going to be a great run blocker for this team. He's going to be fantastic on wide receiver screens. I think Cliff is going to use him a lot on pre-snap motions. I think that, the routes that he does run well, things like slants and digs, are the things that Cliff is going to want him to run on the backside of concepts. So I think that Deebo's actually a terrific fit as a number 2 receiver to Terry McLaurin in this offense. And for me, it's pretty simple when it comes to Deebo this year, guys. If he thrives in this offense, he's going to get another contract, all right? Because plain simply, the Commanders, they traded for him with 1 year left on his deal, but they did not give him an extension, all right? They're saying, you got to prove yourself this year. And if he thrives, he's going to get that next contract and stay here for the long term. But if he disappoints and he looks more like the Deebo Samuel from last year where he didn't even get 700 receiving yards, he's going to be a free agent next spring, and the Commanders are going to be looking for a new wide receiver too, so the pressure is on for Deebo. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will Deebo Samuel get a second contract with the Washington Commanders? Give me a yes or no down there in the comments section. Pretty simple for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time, but let me know if you think Deebo gets a second contract here in the nation's capital. All right, so now let's get into Marshon Lattimore, another player that had a down year last year, dealt with injuries, and he's coming in this year hoping for a bounce-back year. And Marshon, looked fantastic during Commanders OTAs. He looks like that hamstring is fully healed, and, the expectation is he's going to be this team's legit number 1 shutdown corner. And if he can get back to 100% healthy, he's got the talent and the ability to be that for this team. Now, he's got 2 big things to prove this year. Number 1, he needs to prove that he can stay healthy, all right? The best ability is availability, right? And the second thing is that he needs to prove that when he is on the field, that he can still play like a number 1 corner, because when he was on the field for the Commanders last year, that wasn't the case because he was nursing that hamstring injury while he was playing. You guys can see here throughout Marshon Lattimore's career that he has missed quite a few games, especially over the last 3 seasons. He would very periodically miss some games early on in his career, but he would stay healthy for most of the season. But then the last 3 years, 10 games missed in 2022, 7 games missed in 2023, and then 8 games missed in 2024. And that's coincided with some lowering PFF grades in his career as well. You look at those first 2 years in New Orleans, a legit shutdown number 1 corner, the 7th and 18th highest graded corner in football those 2 seasons. But then after that, he's only had 1 season where he is ranked in the top 50 of corners, and that was in 2021. Okay, so last year he barely cracked the top 90 in corners because he was playing hurt for most of the season, and the Commanders are hoping that he's going to be able to come in this year back to 100% health, stay healthy, and then play at a high level like he did earlier on in his NFL career. Because when he's healthy, he's awesome. He's got great speed, physicality. He does a really good job, but he just needs to prove that he can stay healthy. and that he's still got it even though he's getting older. Then we get to Brian Robinson Jr. entering a contract year, and with the drafting of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who has really done a good job during the summer this year, and he's expected to really carve out a role for himself in future seasons at the running back position. If B-Rob is going to earn himself, another contract, and he's going to be the long-term answer at number one running back here in Washington, he's going to have to break out this year, all right? And I think that he's played pretty darn well and very consistent over his 3 seasons to this point. He's always in that 700-yard kind of range. Last year he put up the most touchdowns of his career. He's consistently gotten better at that, and his yards per carry has consistently gotten better as well. But just, still under 800 yards. He's never been a 1,000-yard rusher. I think he needs to take his game to a whole nother level this year and get close to that 1,000-yard mark if he wants to remain the starting running back for the Washington Commanders long term, because if they're going to be spending big money on a running back on this offense, he's got to be worth it, all right? And with a guy like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt that has a lot of promise on this Commanders roster heading into the year, you got to prove that you got to tell essentially the Commanders front office that, hey, don't turn to Ja'Cory. I'm your guy. He's got to prove that this year. So if he doesn't, I think that he's going to be a free agent next year. Another guy that I think has a lot to prove after getting a big contract is Javon Kinlaw. Now, this team loves him, all right? He was their top target heading into free agency. And they gave him a 3-year contract worth $15 million per season, $45 million total. So that's a lot of money to be spending on an interior defensive lineman. It sounds like they're going to use him on the outside, on the edge, on early downs in particular. He's very athletic, very strong, great first step. And, he's had some good seasons in this league, but he's also had some bad seasons. You guys can see there 2022 and 2021, 0 sack production. But over the last 2 years, he has gotten a pretty decent amount of sacks, where he's put up 8 sacks in the last 2 years. 4.5 of those came last year with the New York Jets, had 2 forced fumbles and 5 TFLs as well. So he has been getting better, but, it's certainly not at the level where he is an impact, disruptive interior defensive lineman that you give a big contract to. There's a little bit of projection here from the Washington Commanders, and obviously, Adam Peters believes in him. He was a part of the group that drafted him in San Francisco very early, and, Washington now expects Kinlaw to be an immediate impact, not only on the interior, but it sounds like they're going to utilize his size and athleticism combo to play him at the edge a little bit as well. So I'm very intrigued by Javon Kinlaw, but he's got to prove this year that he was worth that money for the Washington Commanders. Another interior player that's got something to prove this year is Jer'Zhan Newton, or Johnny Newton, whichever one you prefer. But Newton, had the same foot procedure done on both feet last year during the offseason before he got drafted by the Commanders. Then he really didn't have an offseason program with Washington. And then, when he got healthy, he got back into the fold with Washington, and he did show some good things. He had 2 sacks towards the end of the season last year, made some impact plays with some TFLs, had forced fumble and a recovery as well. And I loved his tape coming out of Illinois. All right, I think he can be truly a disruptive pass rusher from the interior, but this is going to have to be the year where he proves that he was worth that high draft selection and he was worth the hype coming out of the Fighting Illini. So I have a high level of belief in him. I think that he could be a really great running mate next to Daron Payne for many years here in Washington. But he certainly has a lot to prove heading into year 2 now that he's fully healthy. Another guy that I think has a lot to prove is Jordan McGee, who this team really believes in, and they think he can be kind of like a quote-unquote Jeremy Chin type of player, even though Jeremy was technically a safety and Jordan McGee is technically a linebacker. Chin was a big safety, and McGee is an undersized linebacker. So they're actually, not completely far apart in terms of physical skill set. McGee is known more as a pass coverage type of player. That's what he was known for at Temple. Very, very athletic, as per usual when it comes to Adam Peters' draft picks. But they're expecting him to step into that role of kind of that intermediary type of bandit type of player, whatever you want to call it, the Jaron Curse role, the Jeremy Chin role. They're expecting him to step into that role after not really playing last season. They carried him on the roster, didn't play a whole lot. So this is really the year where they are expecting him to play a big role this year. Then another player here that is going to have a lot to prove is Luke McCaffrey. He's heading into the second year of his career. Didn't do a whole lot last year, just 18 catches on the season, so about a catch per game, a little bit more than that with 168 yards. Honestly, Mac did the most of his damage as a kick returner, and I still think he brings some of that value to this team. I do expect him to make the team. But in terms of his role, that's going to have to be carved out in training camp, and it's going to have to be earned every step of the way. I think he's made some strides, and the reports from him coming out of OTAs have been very positive. So really rooting for Luke McCaffrey. I mean, this team spent a pretty high draft pick on him, so I'm hoping he works out. But this is a big year to really determine his long-term future with this franchise. Then Percy Butler, a safety that really struggled for this team last year. They bring in Will Harris, who's kind of a similar type of player, so it's very possible Butler loses to Harris in camp, and they let Jordan McGee play that kind of bandit safety, kind of hybrid safety type of role, and Butler doesn't play a whole lot this year. But the coaching staff have really praised his offseason. They really seem to like him. But despite that, not a good PFF grade last year. He was dead last among NFL safeties with just a 41.3 PFF grade. That is absolutely abysmal. He's going to have to get a lot better this year, guys, if he wants to see the field and he wants to have success for this defense. He certainly has quite a bit to prove once we get to training camp in a couple of weeks. That'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report. If you are a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, type those real ones in all caps down there in the comments section. We want to show you guys some love down there in the comments section. So really do appreciate all of your guys' support. But make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're a real one, you made it to the end of the video, only the real ones are subscribed, right? So if you're saying that you're a real one, you better make sure you have clicked that subscribe button because we give you guys free, informative Commanders content every single day on this channel. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button right now.